Next, we will hear from a panel. If we can have our panelists come up. Aminah Abdul-Hakim, SCP Independent Facilitator and IRC Local, which is Inland Regional Center Local. Kyungshil Choi, founder of Korean SCP Network and is also a parent. Julie Diep, who is founder and president of OC Autism Foundation, who's also a self-advocate and parent. We have Elizabeth Gomez, director of Integrated Community Collaborative, ICC, also a parent. Chris LyBurtus, who's a parent, and Oscar Mercado, communication and outreach manager at ICC, and who's also a self-advocate. So we're going to hear first from Elizabeth Gomez. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Is it good here? Okay. All right. Okay. Well, thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I want to say, first of all, I want to say thank you to Disability Voices United for this amazing opportunity to be here today, for the amount of work that they do. And Judy, thank you. And also for inviting me to be here today. My name is Elizabeth Gomez, and I am the mother of two wonderful young boys served by the regional center system. That's really the most important job for me, but they led me to the work that I do today. And as the director of the Integrated Community Collaborative, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what we do. So we are an organization led by parents, siblings, and self-advocates who find a very important need in holding hands with the community and the families that we work with and help each other in the process and navigate the very complicated systems of support. We are grateful for all the work that everyone does, but we find ourselves, what I always say, in a very different world. I usually compare it to being in a place where everybody's doing things and everybody's busy, but somehow I always feel like my world and the world that we live in is very complicated and different. So today I was asked to share a little bit about some of I guess more than anything, the stories behind the work that we do, because I think that it's important that we start talking about who are these families that we talk about and why are their lives being so impacted by disparities. And sometimes we say it's the language barrier. Sometimes we say that it could be that we don't understand or we don't know, or, you know, economic factors or things like that. But I kind of narrow it down to sometimes it's just life, and life affects people differently when you have a child with a disability, and on top of that, you're dealing with a lot of other issues that sometimes are not seen when you're looking for help. Is when life gets very complicated. So today I wanted to take some time and tell you that the reason why I decided to share with you about these families is because this is every day for ICC. We work with families who are constantly in crisis or struggling. And unless I tell you that there is you have to stay on the mic. Okay. So this is little Aaron, and I wanted you to know that Aaron is a young boy with autism who was very happy, did have challenges, but nobody noticed that, not the school, not the clinic that he was going to, not the regional center, nobody really noticed that this child started to have a lot of complications with his eyes. He would constantly hit his eyes, and what they would tell the mother was that there were allergies, or that were behavioral and things like that. But what ended up happening is he had a vitamin A deficiency that was never found, and from that, it very complicated today. He's blind, and that happened in a very short period of time. The sad thing for us was that watching Aaron now, in the life that now he lives is heartbreaking. And we're trying to see why can a child that should have been helped wasn't helped. The mother went to all the right places, knocked on all the right doors, asked the right people, but every single place where she went to sent her somewhere else, told her that the help would be somewhere else. And then when you go from one place to another, and then we have a smile like that to a child that consistently now has just all, he cannot see, he sits in his classroom and will not move because he has autism and he doesn't know how to even understand what's happening to him. And so this is little Aaron. And I don't, my point here today is that if the first door would have opened, if somebody would have guided, if somebody would have helped and stayed connected, he would not be blind today. He would have gotten the right help. And today, even as everything that's happening, we still don't know, we still don't have supports. He still doesn't have any services. The mother's still lost. So from a tragedy to another, and we're still looking for help for little Aaron. These are the injustices that we talk about and that we see every day. This is how the world changes. And when you hear the story of one person, it's not just another person, it's a family and it's impacted. And so what ICC tries to do is stay with them, but we also find the same barriers. And these are the reasons why I'm here. I'm gonna, just kind of share one more story. This is very heartbreaking, the second one, and I'm not gonna take a lot of time, but I do want you to know that this is a precious 7-year-old girl with Down syndrome who was minding her beautiful life one day and run across the street and a car ran over her. It was a trailer. This little girl took hours to be helped because of where they live and the support that she needed. But by the time they took her to the hospital, this little girl survived by pure miracle of God. But what comes next for this child is heartbreaking as well. Now we have a child that is paralyzed, who lives in a trailer home, who has not received any help, who still till today, a year later after this tragedy, has no classes, no school. No one is really come to support them. This mother, I found her just saying, please, somebody help me. Every other word she says is tears and crying and tears and crying. So you have to stop and say, what do we do? Because I'm still, trying to get services for her. And we're only parents, right? Helping other parents. But at the same time, we know the professionals are there, the supports are there, the service exists, they're out there. But why is she at home in a trailer home without any supports? She started with IHSS, looking for IHSS, and the IHSS assessment led the family to a social worker, because what ended up happening is they sent Child Protective Services because they claimed that the home where she lives is not appropriate. So she was looking for supports, right? Help. We were trying to get her IHSS services, but instead of getting the services, now her life got more complicated because now they're looking at, where does she live? This is not a proper place to live. You can't separate, this is life, right? She has this is where they live. Instead, they should have provided the services. Instead, she should be contacted by the regional center. Instead, she's being told, I can't help you. There's nothing I can do for you. There's nothing I can do for you. And that is the problem. So what I'm here to say today and to start this conversation, and that's why I started with the stories, is because I really believe we need to stop just hearing the story, but really stop and say, this is real. This is happening every day. The majority of the families that we work with, this is the crisis and the lives and the lack of services and supports magnifies the pain. And I think that that's what I relate to. I relate to that pain that is outside, that is out there. And all I'm trying to say is, I'm not being negative and I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, what can we do to start really discussing about these families? And this is the world that I live in. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth Gomez. If I can just remind everyone to silence their phone. Please, everyone, silence your phones. And next, we're going to hear from Chris LyBurtus.
Wow. Wow, that was a lot. I'm still processing that myself. Wow. Hello and good morning, everyone. Hello and good morning, everyone. I'm here today to represent my most precious and innocent son, Mr. Noah Jones. Noah's a 15-year-old, nonverbal, beautiful African-American young man who has been gravely impacted by the symptoms of his autism. Unfortunately, my son has extreme, aggressive, and self-injurious behaviors that have gotten progressively worse from the time he has been 10 years old. The system has failed him from the medical, educational, as well as the regional center in a horrendous way. 3 years ago, our family's living situation became unsafe and unmanageable for us all. We went through literally 2 years of nothing short of a living hell. From being ignored by his treating neurologist when I tried explaining that the medications being prescribed weren't helping, but in fact were making matters worse, to being told that we needed to increase the dosage. With each dose increase came increased behaviors. Shortly after the whole COVID situation, Noah began to struggle immensely at school, exhibiting extreme behaviors, resulting in him being removed from the public school system to a special day program. Through it all, I remained in constant communication with the regional center, indicating that we needed help. Literally begging and pleading for some in-home support, only to receive a meager 20 hours of respite. The support we received was inconsistent and inappropriate with untrained staff. When things reached their highest point, their only recommendation was for us to call 911. Imagine being put in a situation to have no other option but to call 911 on your 13-year-old precious African-American son. I can't even count the number of 72-hour holds I had to have him placed under. All the while, with no real support from the regional center as to what to do, where I could take him to get the medical help he desperately needed. Oh, excuse me. Each and every time, they went through the same exact motions, reaching out to the same exact facility that had no place for him and rejected him for any type of medical intervention, each and every time. At this point, I began to take matters into my own hands, and on my own, I was finally able to get him hospitalized. I found him a bed with no help from the regional center through College Hospital, Costa Mesa. It was finally acknowledged that in fact, the medications he had been prescribed were not helping. Unfortunately, the new medications created new problems, resulting in my seeking a second hospitalization through UCLA, not Orange County, and this required me to pay $850 to have him transported via ambulance. Things became more manageable for a bit with the new meds for the next 6 to 9 months until they weren't. 13 months ago, I had to have Noah removed from our home and placed at a Star Crisis Intervention Home, also known as a 6500 hold. At the time, what I didn't know was that at the end of the 12-month hold, that I would be required to go before the court to be allowed to have my son returned to his home. With a recommendation coming from Regional Center for Noah to remain in some type of a group home living situation with necessary supports for him to remain safe, I then became forced by the courts by a regional center's recommendation for him to go to a similar placement, such as Star in San Diego, 3 hours from our home. That move should have taken place 2 days ago. However, last week, the home ended up rescinding their offer for his placement due to staffing issues. Imagine that. With there now being no place for him to go, it seemed as though the only option was for him to return to his home. The regional center began to scurry to get things in order for Noah to transition home with all of the necessary supports in place. On Monday, I received notice that the public defender and the district attorney were petitioning the recommendation for him to return home. Just yesterday, with an hour's notice, I had to appear before a judge to fight for the right to have my son to be allowed to come home. Noah will be returning home on Monday. And all I can do is hope for the best. We will have 24/7, 2-to-1 in-home support with ABA and several other resources in place. We will have to reappear before the court in 6 weeks to let them know how things are going. The staff and myself are required to report any significant incidences of physical aggression or property destruction within 72 hours, which will then determine what is next for my poor, precious, and innocent son, Mr. Noah Jones. In spite of the constant changing situation, I managed to make it here today. Unable to begin writing this until 10 o'clock last night because it was obviously been a constantly changing by the minute. They planned on releasing Noah home today, but as you can only imagine, as much as I want for him to come home, I insisted, I won't say kicked and screamed, that I could not miss the opportunity to be here with all of you today. So I want to thank Disability Voices United for the opportunity and the honor to be here. And I want to thank Will Linier for his amazing legal support and advice that he's given me through all of this. And lastly, I want to thank the LA Times, Emily Reyes, for being here today and for continuing to follow and share the story of my son, Noah.
Thank you, Chris. Heartbreaking. Next, we're going to hear from Oscar Mercado.
Good morning. First of all, I want to start off thanking Disability Voices United for inviting me to speak on my testimony. My name is Oscar Mercado. I'm a self-advocate affiliated with the Integrated Community Collaborative, and I'm going to share my story, the story of someone who did not receive any services whatsoever since for all my childhood, for all of my school life, which happened to be the worst time of my life. I was diagnosed with autism in the 2nd grade, and ever since then, I could never really find my place. I struggled a lot with academia. I was unable to process information that teachers were able to, that they were lecturing. And because I was unable to process the information, I wasn't able to do the assignments. And so I had to take that plus the school homework at night. I had no chance for me to go play at the park, no chance for me to hang out with friends, because all of my evenings I was occupied trying to either do the assignments or study for exams, which, by the way, took up all until 11 in the evening just for me to get a C, a mediocre grade. There's a lot of struggle. The biggest struggle for me particularly was having to deal with the stimuli of sounds, particularly the monthly required fire drills that schools had to do. It's terrible. It's a horrible sound. It just comes out of nowhere. And the school knew about my situation. They've seen me react, but they decided not to do anything about it. Instead, the principal told me, well, it's something that you're going to have to face, that you will eventually overcome. If that were the case, I would have overcome it already, but I had to deal with that for 12 years. I had no friends, no social support whatsoever, no other services outside, other than the loving support of my parents, which I'm very thankful for, because if it weren't for them, I wouldn't be here today. Excuse me. It's very, very long and painstaking road to deal with. The school counselor wasn't able to help me whatsoever. In fact, she and many of the school staff members were hiding information. We were questioning about what services, what helps are there outside of the school, and they said no. They pointed at the regional center, and we went there, but they just gave me a quick screening, and they said, "Oh, you're okay. You don't need any help from us." And they dismissed me, and we never applied again. We never appealed again, because we were like, "That's it. What can we do?" I just dealt with it until high school. High school was the first time I actually was able to do things by myself. I was, very, very proud when I saw my progress report, and I got straight A's for the first time by myself for all 7 classes. No supports whatsoever. And ever since then, I've worked really hard to keep that going all the way up until college. because I didn't want to go back to the dark ages. I didn't want to go back to having to sit every single evening, having to focus on doing assignments instead of, doing what a child is supposed to do, which is supposed to have fun, supposed to enjoy himself or herself, doing the typical things that a child would do. No child needs to go through that, to sit on a table for 6-7 hours straight for studying for exams. The education curriculum should be much more flexible, should be adapted. I had an IEP, but I didn't know the rights that I was entitled to. I didn't know the power that I had. I didn't know how to go through the process. And while my father and I were native English speakers, we just weren't able to understand the bureaucratic language behind that document and what it really meant to have an IEP. And it wasn't until high school where I learned the value of the IEP, and I started making my presence known, and I started advocating for myself and saying, I want this and I want now. It wasn't until high school where they actually made an accommodation for me to be excused from the school setting when they were going to do their monthly fire drills. I've never gotten that accommodation before from any school, and so that's the story that I have. And it was super difficult to face this education system, and no child should go through this. That's my message, and I hope that others are inspired by that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oscar. Mercado. Next, we'll hear from Aminah Abdul-Hakim.
Hello, my name is Aminah Abdul-Hakim. I'm going to share with you all a story that some of you may know and some of you may not. On March 9, 2024, Brian Gaynor, a 15-year-old Black autistic teen, was killed by law enforcement in Apple Valley during a mental health crisis. He was not seen as a child in need of help. He was seen as a threat. As a mother of a Black 23-year-old autistic son and a resident of Apple Valley myself, I find this infuriating. Ryan's death was not just a tragic misstep. It was the result of longstanding systemic failures in education, healthcare, regional centers, and law enforcement. These systems, which should be lifelines for our families, have continually failed us. Ryan's story is not a rare occurrence. It's a glaring example of the inequities Black families face every day. The systems meant to support us continually put up barriers. Ryan's story, like so many others, exposes the hard truths we already know. I will not be silent. We will not be silent. Ryan endured bullying and isolation throughout his time in school. His experience shines a harsh light on how education system consistently overlooks and misunderstands Black autistic children. Schools are often unprepared, ill-equipped, and disconnected from the realities of students like Ryan. They lack the resources and understanding to effectively address the unique intersection of race and disability. As a result, our children, who should be protected, nurtured, and empowered, are mistreated and denied the opportunity to thrive. Ryan's struggles were persistent, and his parents repeatedly sought help during previous crises. Deputies were called to their home 5 times before, and even though Ryan was taken to a mental health facility on one occasion, the comprehensive support he needed was never put in place. Black autistic children like Ryan are often underserved and deprived of the critical services they require. Even when families actively seek help, they encounter a system that doesn't provide the ongoing assistance necessary. Ryan's situation reflects broader gaps in healthcare, where Black children frequently miss out on the culturally responsive and consistent interventions essentially needed for their well-being. While I don't know if Ryan was a regional center client, I've experienced firsthand the barriers Black families face when trying to access these services. Regional centers, which are supposed to be the bridge to vital services, often leave us fighting through delays, cultural incompetence, and a lack of urgency. These disparities aren't just bureaucratic hurdles. They lead to life-altering consequences, leaving families without the support they need to thrive. The most devastating failure came from law enforcement. On March 9th, when Ryan was in crisis, his autism wasn't recognized. He was treated as a threat, not as a child in desperate need of protection and understanding. Instead of de-escalating the situation, the deputies escalated it, resulting in fatal outcome. This isn't a one-time failure. It reflects a broader issue where law enforcement's involvement in mental health crises, coupled with racial bias and inadequate training, often lead to tragic consequences for Black neurodivergent individuals. When care is needed, their presence can turn a crisis into a tragedy. Ryan Gaynor's death is a stark reminder that the systems we rely on are failing Black families. These failures just don't affect individuals, they affect entire communities, perpetuating harm and deepening mistrust. If we don't address these inequities, more lives will be lost, and society as a whole will continue to carry the burden of systemic injustice. We must recognize that the well-being of our most vulnerable is directly linked to the well-being of everyone in this society. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Thank you so much, Aminah. Next, we'll hear from Julie. Diep.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, I just want to thank DBU and Judy Marks, Dr. Sergio, and especially all the parents that I get to sit next to me. I want you to meet me today, not because I'm the president of OC Autism and not because I just won school board for Anaheim, but I want you to know that I'm a person with autism. My I'm just always proud to say next year I'm gonna turn 50, but I didn't get a diagnosis until I was 42. Not because I didn't know that I have autism. I'm the president of OC Autism. I'm a speech pathologist. I'm a behavioral therapist. I'm a speech pathologist for celebrity around the world. But because I didn't love myself, for the longest time, I didn't love my autism. For the longest time, even when I go on TV repeatedly, I never told I was autistic. I was comfortable saying, oh, I have anxiety, I have depression, I'm bipolar, I can even say that, but I couldn't say I have autism. And the challenge today is for you to consider helping yourself. We're in a culture that we don't help ourselves because it's not okay. I come from a Vietnamese American community. I was a refugee on a boat to come to America. So I know everybody here fought hard to be an American. And it's sad to see that we have to fight hard to be human, to have basic human dignity. It's so hard for me to tell people that I'm autistic growing up because someone always tells me, no, you're not. Every doctor told me I'm not. Even when I became a speech pathologist, expert witness around the world, working with celebrities, my psychiatrist says, no, you're just anxious. Oh, you're just bipolar too. You just have a depression episode. The truth is, I know I'm autistic. I had to go out of network to self-advocate, to go to my psychiatrist who was who? Kobe Bryant's psychiatrist. Who has access to his psychiatrist? And why do I have access to Kobe's psychiatrist? Because we work on celebrity cases around the world. I even have a patient that is friend with Martin Luther King, who he nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. But I don't want you to see those accolades. I want you to see a self-advocate. Like Chris, It was hard to get here today. 2 years ago, I was in a 504 plan meeting at Garden Grove Unified School District. I told my son and my daughter that day, I'm not going to come into this meeting as a polished president of OC Autism. I'm going to be a piss off mother. And I'm going to drop the F-bomb. And I said, fuck you. This is not okay. And I said, disability rights is civil rights. You will not do that, and they still try to do that to our Black communities and brothers and sisters. And sure as hell, you're not going to do it to me anymore. My son was a junior in high school, diagnosed with autism at 8 years old, and still has not had an IEP. I fired our dear friend, my special ed attorney, because he could not even get the school district to approve any IEE assessor, because I got the Rolls Royce of the assessors. And the only way I got it, because I said, my son's going to be a senior this year. I'm not here to fight to win. I'm here to make sure our disability voices are heard. I'm going to spend the money and hire a TV crew and do a documentary. And so I got approved the next day.
Oh, yeah.
I got Dr. Budding, neuropsych, at $8,000. I got Dr. Susan Holler. I got all of my friends, because I'm also an IE assessor for speech. So what I'm telling you is continue to fight your family, for your family. Continue to fight for your child. But most importantly, continue to fight for yourself. As a speech pathologist, I don't want to work with your child. That's the truth. I want to work with you. Dr. Sergio, you and I know research shows that autism runs in the family. I can guarantee you most of you guys are not diagnosed. I challenge you and I invite you to come onto my train. Be a part of my village. Allow me to help you professionally, personally, and I invite you to my village. Thank you so much.
Really, thank you. That was beautifully said. Now we're going to hear from Kyungshil Choi, who will be speaking in Korean and having Cecilia Chang interpret in English.
Hi, my name is Kyungshil Choi. I am Korean SDP Network. I will share my community story in Korean and Cecilia will translate in English. 여기에 만드는 것이 특별한 재능을 가진 자폐 소년이 있습니다. 그의 가족은 5살 때부터 그가 가진 재능을 알게 되었고 가족과 친구들은 예술가로 성장하기를 바랬습니다. 고등학교 2학년 때 커뮤니티 컬리지 아트 클래스에 참여하여 소년은 꿈을 키웠습니다.
There was a young boy with autism who found great joy in making art, showing a unique talent that filled his family and friends with hope for his future as an artist. Over the years, he worked very hard to develop his style and creativity.
21살이 되었을 때 커뮤니티 컬리지에 출석을 위한 디스트릭의 교통 서비스가 끊겼습니다. 그의 가족은 교통 서비스를 리저널 센터에 요청했습니다. 하지만 답변은 실망스러웠습니다. 리저널 센터는 그가 커뮤니티 컬리지에 다니는 것을 승인할 수 없다고 말하며 같은 반 친구들이 다니는 어덜트 데이 프로그램에 참여하는 것을 추천하였습니다. 비용 효율성이라는 이유로 대중교통카드를 교통 서비스로 지원해 줄 수 있다고 말했습니다. 1시간 반에 한 번씩 오는 집 앞의 버스로 컬리지 통학은 사실상 불가능했습니다.
When his IEP ended at age 21, he enrolled in community college to continue pursuing his dream. Without school district supporting his family, the family sought transportation help from the regional center. The regional center questioned his choice to attend the college, saying it wasn't authorized, and instead suggested that he join an adult day program. As a solution, they offered a public transit card. Its cost effectiveness was the reason. Living on a hill with a bus that comes only every hour and a half, this solution was impossible to implement.
또 다른 청년이 있습니다. 이 청년은 시각, 청각, 그리고 지적 장애를 가지고 있습니다. 가족은 복합 장애로 인해 청년을 교육할 전문가를 찾는 것이 매우 어려웠지만 훈련된 전문가를 찾을 수 있었고 고등학교를 졸업할 수 있었습니다.
Here's a young adult with multiple disabilities, visual, auditory, and intellectual. Despite immense challenges, this family found entrained specialists helping him graduate from high school.
가족은 이 전문가의 계속적 도움 속에서 청년이 독립적으로 성인으로 성장하기를 원했습니다. 그리하여 자기 결정 프로그램에 참여하게 되었습니다.
To build on this progress, the family enrolled him in a self-determination program, hoping its flexibility would enable him to continue working with the same specialists and hopefully become an independent adult.
그러나 리저널 센터는 자기 결정 프로그램의 자금을 이 전문가에게 사용하는 것을 거부했습니다. 서비스 코드가 없다는 이유입니다. 그 대신에 가트판 친구들이 있는 시각 장애인이 다니는 데이 프로그램을 제안했습니다.
The regional center denied the funding of the specialists, citing there was no service code for such service. Instead, they suggested he attend a day program for the visually impaired, like many of his classmates.
리저널 센터는 서비스 코드와 펄리스라는 도구로 고객의 독특한 필요를 고려하지 않습니다. 그리하여 가족은 장애를 발견하고 교육을 통하여 자녀들이 사회의 인원으로 성장하기를 바라며 지켜온 20여 년간의 노력을 무너짐을 경험합니다.
The regional center's rigid adherence to service codes and policies without consideration of his unique needs crushed the dreams of the family's dream that nurtured for 20 years, dreaming of him becoming an independent member of the community someday.
부모들은 자녀들을 위한 지원자이며 길잡이라는 희망으로 리저널 관계자들을 만납니다. 그러나 현실은 리저널 센터로부터 비용 효율성이라는 이유로 사용 불가능한 서비스 리스트를 제공받곤 합니다.
For many of us, the regional center marks the beginning of our journey, a beacon of support in our darkest times. But the reality soon sets in where we are handed a list of services so centered on cost effectiveness that they become impractical and unusable.
그리고 제너릭 퍼스트를 강조합니다. 부모들은 학교, 보험, 다양한 정부 기관과 리저널 센터 사이에서의 핑퐁 게임 속에서 시간을 소비하고 자녀의 소중한 학습 기회가 사라지는 것을 경험합니다. 가족들은 점점 더 큰 스트레스를 겪어 어떤 가정은 아예 노력 자체를 포기하기도 합니다.
Then our family fight through generic resources. The IEPs, health insurance, and government entities, each one pushing back, leaving us feeling like ping pong balls. These battles often drag on for months, resulting in lost learning opportunities for our children. Many overwhelmed families ultimately give up.
영어가 제2외국어인 이민자 가정에서 고품질의 통역 서비스와 모국어가 된 정보가 제공되기가 필요합니다. 현재 제공되고 있는 통역 서비스는 통역사가 세부 사항을 이해하지 못하고 내용이 왜곡되어지고 고객의 필요가 정확히 전달되지 않는 경험을 합니다. 고객의 필요를 이용하고 의미 있는 서비스를 제공하는 것이 진정한 비용 효율성이라고 생각합니다.
English is a second language for many families. While the regional center provides language support services, the heavy emphasis on cost effectiveness often renders them nearly unusable, a significant waste of time and resources. The regional centers need to prioritize quality as well, offering genuine, meaningful language support for these families. That is the true path to cost effectiveness.
사랑하는 자녀를 위한 부모들의 열정과 헌신이 리저널 센터의 지원 속에서 꽃피우기를 희망합니다. 자녀들이 부모가 더 이상 이 세상에 없을 때에도 그들의 존엄을 지키고 살아가며 사랑하는 사람들의 지지 속에서 지역사회의 소중한 일원으로 살아갈 수 있는 미래를 꿈꿉니다. 감사합니다.
We hope to see our children flourish and thrive with the support of the regional center. We envision a future, even when we are no longer here, that our children can live with dignity as valued members of the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kyungshil. Hi. Let's give a round of applause to all our panelists.